Hey guys, it's Dr. Hayes, and I wanted to make another video here about the revisions process. This is something else we can talk about more in class, but I thought that I would make this video. I usually give this lecture in class on the board, and so I was going to try something out here. Yes, it's just a white screen. That's what you should be seeing. Is the white screen, but I'm going to draw on it here in just a second. But I do this sort of lecture here on the board sometimes where I sort of try to visualize what your revisions should look like. So what we're talking about is when you have a first draft and you've maybe gotten it looked at by someone, maybe you sent it to someone and had them give you some feedback, or maybe it's in a class where you've had a paper graded already and you need to sort of redo some of it. I thought I would sort of give you some tips about how to go through and sort of systematically check your paper to get the most efficient process out of your revisions. So I like to envision it as sort of a funnel. So I'm going to draw a funnel here. I like to envision the revisions as sort of a funnel. And so the idea is that it starts broad at the top of the funnel, and then it gets more and more narrow as you go through. So at the top of your funnel, the broadest form of revisions, you have the structural changes. So this is things like, is the essay complete? Does it have all of the parts? Is there an introduction, a body, and a conclusion? Does it meet all the minimum requirements? Is it the right length? Does it have the right amount of sources that it's supposed to have? Does it have the works cited? That kind of thing. So the structural, like, are all of the pieces there? And is anything missing? Is the whole thing complete? You want to make sure that's sort of your first part. That seems very obvious, but I have had many students turn in papers to me that had no conclusion or was missing a key part. So that's the sort of the broadest thing. The next element of your revisions, go a little bit more down the funnel, is the paragraphs. So in the paragraph level, you have things where you look at each individual paragraph itself. So you would look at, do the paragraphs have topic sentences that are clear? Is each paragraph unified? Is it about the thing it's supposed to be about? Is there enough information about each topic in each paragraph? Is there information in any particular paragraph that doesn't belong there? That's something you look for. You can look for at the introduction and the conclusion. Do they each do the job that they're supposed to do? Right? Does each paragraph do the job it's supposed to do? Are the paragraphs in the right order that make the most sense? Like, those are all things that you would want to fix. And the idea is that these things at the top here, these broad edits that you're making, are things that you want to make sure those things are fixed and in place before you get more specific. Because if you could proofread and nitpick your paper and get it all fixed, and then maybe that paragraph ends up going away or getting completely rewritten, and you've wasted that time proofreading when you should have been fixing big things first. The next level down will get a little bit more specific, and that is sentences, right? So once you've gotten your structural issues solved, and you've gotten all your paragraphs complete and coherent and in the right order, then you want to look at your sentences. So this is when you're looking at wording. Like, are the sentences grammatically correct? Do they make sense? Do they say what you mean for them to say? Are there any words missing? This is the point where it would be good for you to read your essay out loud to yourself, because when you read out loud, errors and missing words and things stand out. When you read it in your head, you know what you wanted it to say, and so your mind will just sort of automatically fill in what you wanted it to say. But if you read it out loud, your mouth is forced to say only what's on the page. And so errors and things like that will stand out. On the sentence level, you look for things like things that you learned in English 101, things like sentence fragments, run-ons, comma splices, things like that. And so you don't want to try to get all your sentences perfect before you get the paragraphs situated, because like I said, you might move paragraphs around, you might rewrite them, a paragraph might end up going away. But this is the next step. You get all of your wording of your sentences exactly right. The next level is we're going to move down. It's a little bit more specific. That is word. Oops, that's how you saw that. Gosh. Words, right? So words, the words level, this is when you've already got the paper pretty much exactly how you want it. And like now you're making nitpicky things, like maybe you're making changes on the word level, like individual words, like maybe one word is not exactly the right word that is the most perfect for the situation, so you make a change, and you pick a different word. Or maybe you notice, oh, you know what, maybe this should really be in should be plural. This should be past tense. At this point is where you want to do a spell check just to make sure all the words are spelled correctly, and you want to do a read through to make sure everybody's names are spelled correctly, and things like that. So this is at this point when you're changing words, singular words, you've already gotten the paper pretty much written how it's going to be written, but you're going back through it again, just making final decisions on the exact words you're going to use. Then the sort of final phase, the very like focused specific phase down toward the bottom is typos. So this is where you're doing a proofread, at like a final comb through, and you're just looking for like extra spaces or a misplaced period or a turned around opposite quotation mark, things. You're just combing through it one last time for any sort of, a missing parentheses, things like that. So that's sort of the last phase, but a lot of students make the mistake of looking for those big things, looking for the small things first before they have gotten the big things up here situated, right? And so maybe visualizing it as this funnel, all your edits are sort of funneling down into this pinpoint of when you'll, be finished with the paper. Another key thing is giving yourselves time to do this process, right? Giving yourselves time to where you're not printing it, like you're typing your last sentence and then printing it and the ink is still wet and you're running into class, right? You need to build in time to do this revision process while, with your due dates, right? Your paper's not done when you reach the word count. A lot of times students don't allow time for this revision process, and that's makes the huge difference between an okay paper and a great paper, is giving yourself enough time to revise. So the revision, the sort of process I had told you about, it's in sort of two groups. So this top group up here is one, and it would be what we would call, let's see. Oh, it's not working. Give me a cursor. Oh, that didn't work. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to do some text. There we go. Editing. So this part up here at the top is what we would call the editing process. So the editing process, let me fill it. The editing process is the big stuff: structural changes, paragraphs, sentences. You're editing, you're moving things around, you're making deep changes. This is something that you might go through several versions of editing with, when you're first drafting it and you give somebody to look at it as like a rough draft peer review, then you go back and reword some things and change it. Maybe if we're in school, you have somebody in the writing center look at it, or maybe a professor gives it a once over. So in the editing process is where you make these big changes. Then these more specific changes down at the bottom, that's a lot of times what people call, let me get a thing here. We have proofreading, right? So this proofreading is this more specific part down here when you're looking at word level tweaks, typos. So proofreading should be the tweaking of it in its final version. So too often, students in a peer review scenario or a rough draft scenario, they will make changes on the proofreading level. They'll say, "Oh, I'm revising my draft," but what they're doing, they're proofreading, right? They skip the editing altogether. And so that's not what we want. We don't want you to just proofread to make changes. But too often students they've gotten the paper written and they're committed to what it looks like. They're committed to what it says, and they don't want to go back and take too much away. They don't want to change it too much. But really you've got to, be prepared to cut out huge chunks, to delete whole paragraphs if it doesn't belong. And that's hard to do. I know, especially if you're kind of close on your length, but it's sometimes necessary. That's why it's better to write more than you need, so that you can kind of cut and tweak if you need to trim the fat, so to speak, of making the paper like perfect and good. I think that this is all that I needed to say about revision. I just wanted to, usually in class, I visualize it like this on the board and say, hey, this is sort of the process you need to go through when you're looking at perfecting a paper and tweaking it. And since that's what we were supposed to be talking about in class, I thought I would do it this way. I think it worked out okay. But of course, if y'all have any questions or anything, let me know about that. And if you need a little bit more detail, I'm available and I'm happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys in class, and I will see you later.